G'day all, I'm Chris from Built by Chris. You might remember me from such classics as making a push stick or making a bed for a little kid. The links will be up here if you want to check them out. I'm here at the TimberCon workshop to show you how to use one of these. What's this? It's a jointer. It's a critical piece of equipment you'd use in the milling process if you're milling any sort of rough sawn timber. As we all know, when we go buy a piece of timber, it's not always square, it's not always straight, and you always need a piece of equipment like this in conjunction with a thicknesser to make it nice and square. So if you've got a bow or a twist in it, you put it through your jointer, get at least two edges that are 90 degrees to one another, and then you can move on to the next step. So when you're looking to buy a jointer, there's a lot of things you've got to take into consideration. Number one is how much money you've got to spend. Number two, the space you've got in your workshop. If you've got a massive workshop, sky's the limit. In my case, I have the small 6-inch jointer. It sits on my bench, does everything I need it to do. Only because I don't have the space for something this size. If I did, this would be pride of place. The other things you take into consideration is how often you're going to use the jointer. I mean, if you're making cabinets out of melamine, you don't need one of these. But if you're doing a lot of fine furniture, one of these would be critical in your workshop. You would really need one of these in the workshop. And you'd also want to look at some of the features that jointers have. I mean, they're all pretty much the same, but they have their little things that make them a little bit better than the next one. For example, helical heads. They're all the rage at the moment and they cut beautifully. And how easy they are to set up. All right, so you've gone ahead and you've bought yourself a jointer and you've got it home. What do you do next? Well, if you could take it straight out of the box and use it, that'd be great, but unfortunately we've got to tune them first. Now before you start mucking around with any of that, most importantly, unplug the machine. So the first thing I'm going to do is adjust the outfeed table. So what I need to do is get myself a nice straight edge, pop it down on the outfeed table, move the guard out the way. I bring my straight edge across until it's over the top of the cutters, and all I'm doing, I'm spinning that until because it's just barely touching the blade now, which means it's just sitting a little bit too high, or the outfeed table is sitting a little bit too low. So all I do now is I'm going to be adjusting it until there's no movement in that straight edge. And what makes it easy on this Sherwood one is these wheels at the front. Makes the job a lot easier. There we go. And there we are. That's where we're sitting. So now I've got the outfeed table set so that the top of the cut is lined up with the top of the outfeed table. Next thing I'm going to do is set the fence. But to do that, I use an engineer's square, because I know it's dead 90 degrees. If you don't have an engineer's square, you can always use a carpenter's square. It just depends on the level of accuracy that you're after. But anyway, I've got an engineer's square, so I'm going to use that. So all I do is now put it up against my fence just to see how far out it is, and in this case, it's a mile. And I check both ends of the fence, and just to make sure that that the fence itself isn't warped or bent or anything like that. Okay, so having done all that, I now reach behind here and undo all the locking knobs and just move it around slowly until I get it nice and square. And what I'm looking for is the engineer's square touching the fence so that there's no light showing through. So I've got it right there, and now I'll check it again at both ends just to make sure that I've got it set nice. In this case, I just need a little bit more of a tweak. It doesn't take very long to do it, but it is one of those critical jobs. Oh, look at that. That's absolutely 100% perfect right now. We're good to go. So my joint is all set up. It's all tuned up, ready to go. Next thing I'm going to do is put a piece of timber through it. I need to set my depth of cut. Now, what you want to do is you want to take off as little material as possible, because we all know the timber isn't cheap. And if you take it off, you can't put it back on again. So I'm going to make my passes as shallow as I possibly can while still achieving a nice square edge. Now, the good thing about the Sherwood one here is these handles flick out the way, which is always a bonus. And all I'm doing now is I'm just setting the depth of cut here to as little as possible. I don't want to take off too material at once, purely because you don't want the machine working too hard cutting the timber as well. Get that out the way and we're ready to go. To keep my cut nice and easy and smooth, I'm going to be walking the piece of wood through the jointer. And the good thing about this Sherwood jointer is I can fold these handles out the way so I don't get hung up on anything. Here's a nice piece of board. Now I know that it's not square because it's rough sawn, and I'm going to do this edge first. I'm going to run that through the jointer now and do this edge first. Now that I've jointed the face, I can now reference that against the fence and do it at the other side. Now I can tell you that that is as square can be. Absolutely perfect. 100% perfect. And that's one part of the milling process done. So let me just tell you why the cut on this is so smooth. This particular jointer is fitted with the helical cutter head. Now, the difference between this one and a standard one is you've got about 48 blades here, as opposed to 2 or 3 in the standard jointer. And it just makes so much difference. It's a lot quieter to use, the cut comes out a lot smoother, and it's just a joy to work with. So that's how to set up and use a new jointer. If you need any more information about this particular jointer, links are down below as usual. So I'm Chris from Built by Chris. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye for now.